Hello, you caught me in the middle of the beginning of class. Mr. Fowler forgot to click on the record button, but welcome to the Wednesday session number 6. We're going to go ahead and take a look at what's on our agenda. So, like I was saying, in terms of our standard preview, we're going to talk about how to use your textbook today, meaning Practical Argument, the third short edition, to queue up some questions for responding to visual arguments. Now, I pointed these out on Monday. Hopefully you got a chance to look at them, but even if you didn't, we're going to use an example of how to structure an outline in response to this next project assignment. You can find the same sorts of questions that I'm going to be addressing on pages 94, the bottom half of 94, and the top of page 95 in your textbook. It's a green checklist. It should be fairly pronounced. So you should have no problems with that. Also, we're going to talk about outlining in general today for about 15 minutes, and then we'll close and reflect on some of the events to come next week and sort of the ideas that we're discussing. For next time, make sure that you've completed your weekly discussion thread entries, and remember that from this point forward, you may want to make sure that you have left enough time to get a hold of a copy of The Princess Bride, if you haven't done so already.
Good.
Now, one thing that I want to talk about before we get into anything else that I realize I forgot or neglected to include is that next Monday, this class will fall on Labor Day. I will not expect you to attend a session, even an online session for Labor Day. So there will be no session on Labor Day. Session 7 will be next week, just a week from today on Wednesday, and then we'll proceed from there according to our regular schedule. So no session, and I'll make an announced posting. No session 7. We will. I will be available because I'm not going anywhere this Labor Day, but I know that that's not realistic for all of my students to assume that they're going to be available or unavailable, so on and so forth. So it'll just be Wednesday next week when we have a session. Okay, let's take a few minutes to review what we discussed on Monday. So I'm going to scroll down to session 5 notes here. And then, of course, the main thing that we did on session 5 or during session 5 was we practiced decoding visual arguments. If you missed session 5, you can go back and watch the video playback of that discussion right by clicking the link right here in session 5, Decoding Visual Arguments. We took a look at a couple of examples from our textbook, specifically examples regarding the print ads for Grand Theft Auto 4. And Silence the Violence on pages 92 and 93 of your textbook, Practical Argument. We also reviewed some of the concerns and issues related to how to use critical thinking skills and apply that analysis to a non-textual or visual argument. And we said that certain skills that we had already practiced, such as the ability to think critically, were carry-over skills or techniques that we could use to become more...
It's breaking up pretty bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Again.
Hold on then. Things that we could use to become more critical readers of visual texts. All right. I have heard, since it's breaking up a little bit, I've heard that it can run smoother with less visuals. So you can remain visible. I'm going to turn my camera off I'm going to stop the video. Maybe this will make it a little easier. And I'm going to use more of the chat function as well. So last time we discussed how critical thinking skills can be readily applied to visuals as well. Oh. Okay. Nick, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this a little smoother or better?
You got real quiet.
Oh, okay. Just double checking. So, before I continue, anybody have any questions about content from last time?
No, I'm okay.
I'm good.
So, for today, I want to transition from the skill set that we've been talking about. Today, I want to transition from discussing these skills to direct application. This means I want to create an example together about tracing how we can take some of this analysis from the idea stage to an outlining stage. So I've posted that in the chat too, so that you can get that in case my microphone's breaking up. So while you contemplate that, I'm going to bring up our first share screen option for today. But you should be able to see this even if you don't see me necessarily as part of the visual. You can also sort of follow along in your textbook if you have it handy on page 94 and 95. So what I did is I took those questions from the checklist and I broke them up into three disparate or distinctive portions: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And I thought, if you were a student and you were approaching an example like this one, you could design a fairly effective outline for a paper using just those checklist questions as a guide. So to do that, we should first of all look at the questions themselves. So for your introduction, according to some of the examples that we've seen so far and how we've established the development of creating a consistent thesis statement, developing certain pieces of evidence, and then refuting potential counter arguments before concluding, I found that you could use these same questions to, like I said, address those very issues. So the first series of questions, I broke this up into about 5 questions. You don't have to organize your paper exactly in the way that I did, but I just tried to lump together questions that I thought were issues you might want to describe in an introduction.
Your microphone's getting choppy again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the notification. let me type this out real quick. And as I'm typing, and we're talking about these questions, I want to go ahead and show you an example that we can use. And if you're interested in this idea, you can use the same example. I'm going to go over here to the contents page. And I'm going to look at this link. So just go ahead and consider this image for a few moments while I type in the response.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to type this in. Let's practice using these elements, using the original theatrical poster of The Princess Bride. Okay. So if we go back to this image for just a moment, you'll notice that there are several things that we can answer as part and parcel of these initial checklist questions. So in what source did the visual appear? What kind of audience, hostile, friendly, neutral, was the visual created? For what purpose was the visual created? Who or what organization created the visual? And what do you know about the goals of the person or organization? And what issue is the visual addressing? So we can begin to answer some of these questions. I'm going to give it a little bullet point here. So in what source did the visual appear? How do you want to answer that?
Hold on.
It's okay. I'm just
We just say like a
grabbing
visual movie poster.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like media or some form.
Okay, excellent. So let's see here. What's movie poster is a movie poster. It is part of a mass media ad campaign. Okay. That's good for now. We'll come back to these ideas if you have more to add. What kind of an audience was it created for?
You're breaking up again.
Sorry about that. So let's go back to the idea of an audience. What kind of audience was it created for?
Ooh. Yes.
People who are into like plays and stuff,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Lazy.
depictions of like fantasy maybe.
Okay. Let me see. Let me see. About some imagery that is also specifically not of a fantastic nature, right?
We
So-
essentially just say like a friendly family audience.
Yes, yes, good. Good, good, good. Let me bring that right back.
Let's say it again.
Yeah.
Friendly family audience.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely like family oriented in like a lighthearted sense, but not like, I don't know if it was like marketed as like supposed to be a comedy, but it was definitely like kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
For the family, sit down and watch.
Yeah. Family oriented and friendly vibe. Okay. All right. Very good. What purpose was it created for? This one's fairly straightforward. Okay.
Entertainment.
Yeah. The poster promotes
Yeah,
entertainment
good job.
value of the film The Princess Bride. Okay, let me italicize that. Remember that in MLA, film titles, book titles, and album titles tend to be italicized, as well as the titles of periodicals, but not the articles that appear in them. Who or what organization created the visual? Let's go back to that visual for just a little bit. Try and make this a little bit larger.
Can you type that out for me?
Sure. What organization or individuals are responsible for the image? What organization or individuals are responsible for creating the visual?
It seems to be a lot, but I'll just stick with the top one, Act 3 Communications.
Yeah. And specifically, I would add Rob Reiner, the producers. Rob Reiner, because he's the producer and director. So if I stop share for just a minute here, we can go back here and note that the poster is was created joint venture between Rob Reiner and his Norman Lear, who actually put up the money. Okay. Last question for the intro. What is the visual addressing?
Let's see.
Do you want me to bring it back up for a bit?
Fantasy.
Okay. All right. Fantasy, but what about fantasy?
Like a romantic fantasy kind of.
Okay.
Adventure.
Yes. Fantasy adventure in the romantic, vein, in the romantic vein of literature. Now, I don't know if any of you have started reading The Princess Bride yet, but this is a very good depiction or explanation of what exactly is being argued in the text. So it's not just fantasy, but it's a specific take on tropes or cliches within the romance adventure. And that's a really big part of what makes this such a successful novel, and why I think in part this film has really stood the test of time. They've just now begun discussions of whether or not it should be remade, and there's a very ardent fan base that says no.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm of two minds about it.
I remade enough movies.
I think a lot of us probably feel that way, but I would be curious to see at least what they could do differently with it. One thing that I will mention real quickly is that in the midst of COVID, I think there was a family that got really got a lot of attention on TikTok of all mediums because they were so bored that they used their local surroundings and their own family to act out or reenact the film version of The Princess Bride. So if you haven't seen that, it's available on YouTube and TikTok, so you can watch that version if you would care to.
Interesting.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just review this outline.
Let's pull up now.
Yeah, well, you can do that if you'd like to. Just pull it up. But, so again, what are we talking about? The image is a poster, part of a mass media campaign for to promote the entertainment value of The Princess Bride. The poster was created by Act 3 Communications, which was a joint venture between Rob Reiner and Norman Lear. And it's the poster is addressing this sort of fantasy adventure in the romantic vein of literature. Okay. So if you compose that as an introduction, we would really just need the operating thesis to tack on. So I would give it a stab, such as something in this vein of thought. I would say that The Princess Bride was a moderate success upon its release, despite being a cult hit or cult classic of its time. Initially, audiences were confused about who the film was being marketed to. And much of this confusion was likely due to its original poster. Okay. So now we have a thesis that we can propose for this visual element. Again, if we just go back and look at it. Now, luckily, most of us, I think, are probably familiar with The Princess Bride. But just exploring this, we have the grandfather in the rocking chair. We have the boy on the bed. And then we have the baseball and baseball bat and this little toy robot and a skateboard. And we have all of that juxtaposed to these kinds of iconic pillars in the sort of the Greco-Roman style. We have a castle way up here in the mountains. And then we have these very ornate stairs leading somewhere, I don't know, presumably to the room. And then we have some text. Scaling the cliffs of insanity, battling rodents of unusual size, facing torture in the pit of despair, or the zoo of death, as you will discover in the book. True love has never been a snap. So, again, if you can imagine a world where you did not know much about this film and you were to encounter this poster, I don't know that I would have even understood what was initially being suggested by this film. It's a bit of a confusing mess, to be honest. And in point of fact, Cary Elwes, the guy who played Wesley, the actor, remembered that when Rob Reiner brought the poster out and unfurled it, and the first thing he said is, there's nothing about any of the central characters here. There's no, Wesley's not on it, Buttercup's not on it, Andre the Giant as Fezzik is not present. What, why did you focus specifically on the intro, outro, middle chapters with the grandfather and the son and the boy? Well, if you read the book, you'll understand why perhaps Rob Reiner was drawn to that image. Still, I don't think it's a poster that has stood the test of time. Most of the posters that I've seen, even including the covers of the DVDs and the multiple reissues that have been created, have not used that poster because the image is just not as captivating. It doesn't say much about the power of that particular film.
Quite honestly, from the look of it, it looks like some sort of I don't know, the never-ending story. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but like the boy enters a book, and then like the kind of story goes on as he imagines it. So it pretty much never ends. As long.
Thank you, Devin. That is almost exactly what I was thinking. Two movies that came up were, number one, the Never-Ending Story, as you identified, and a really offbeat film from around the same period called Return to Oz, which was another story about Dorothy in Oz, starring a young Fairuza Balk, if you can believe that. And it was really dark and particularly disturbing for young audiences. But this film...
Return to Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like a darker version of Alice in Wonderland. But this film did okay, you know. It had a pretty good, press junket. All the actors were really proud of their work. But it was not a hit. And it only became a hit when it found its audience on video in the years preceding. So I think this was an 87 release. But I think the film really started to make its money back in around 1989, about 2 years later. So there's some kind of confusion about exactly when this film was launched and how successful it was. It took a long time for it to earn its money back, which is interesting. So all of these kinds of ideas that we've brought to bear on the introduction, we could expand upon in the outline during the during the body section. What position does the visual take, and how can you tell? Do you agree with this position? Well, we can answer this one. Not every visual that you will use will respond to all of these questions, but this one we can answer. The visual proposes that true love, like many of life's endeavors, is not an easy feat is not an easy feat. There we go. Okay. Right. So we can answer these a couple of questions. Do you agree with this position? Well, I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm going to leave that one blank for right now. Does the visual include word?
Yes.
Film, I'd say words are necessary. So this is Mr. Fowler, but before I commit to this, what do you all think? Are the words on the poster necessary?
Yes.
Why,
Yes.
Devin?
He's give us like something, some sort of taste of what we're gonna deal with as we watch this movie.
Right. So
Not only that, it kind of builds up suspense.
yeah. What do you mean? Can you say a little bit more about
From the
that?
pits of despair.
Can you say a little bit more about
So-
why it builds the suspense?
Yeah, so like it not only does it bring excitement, it kind of leads into like what the plot's about, or maybe a big kind of teases like a big turning point in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when someone's making a poster or visual, like you said, for like a book or a movie, they usually center it around one of the big turning points or conflicts that is resolved, or when it happens, or when the conflict starts.
Yeah, and I think that's very well said, Nehemiah. Thank you for chiming in. I agree. The words on a poster, a very visual medium by many sense, in any sense of the word, is often today less focused on the words. But sometimes when you combine these words and these texts, as you said, they can create a sense of anticipation or foreboding that, you know, posters of today might not be able to accomplish in the same context. So I think that's a very good observation on your part. Okay. So then continuing on, just for the body, you can ask, what points do they make? And does the visual need more or different text? And does the visual seem to be a refutation? Let's start with this one. What point or points does the does the poster make? Do the images make?
You may want to type that out.
Sure.
Your mic
Can
went
you
in and
say
out
that
again.
one more time.
Sure. Yes, I can do that. What points do the words make in the poster?
I would say that the points from the words specifically just kind of give a kind of a broad spectrum idea of like all the stuff that could be in the movie, you know, and that's kind of the suspenseful part is like you got to watch the movie to find out, you know, or like what
Good.
it's about. And like there's a lot of things that could like interest like a lot of different audiences, I think.
Okay.
So like the people who are in it for like, you know, they see love, and so like you might get some people in there thinking it's a love story, and then you see like hits of despair, and you're like, oh, like it might be like a horror movie or something, you know. And like
Okay.
Scaling the
different
cliffs
things.
of insanity, battling
Yeah.
rodents of
Some
unusual
people might think
size,
it's like a
facing
suspense,
torture in a pit of
Yeah.
despair.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. They could encounter romance, danger, action, and the broad appeal.
This romantic atmosphere.
Yeah.
Disasters in the air.
We got a little bit of Lion King mix in here too. Okay. I like it. Okay.
Definitely playing on the imagination. You read a book by a grandpa, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And like that's kind of like the family aspect, you know. It's like a kid and like a elderly man, you know, soon to be grandpa.
Also, the bottom of the poster said something along like the lines of the story is as real as the feelings you feel about it. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that
That could
sounds,
point
sounds
to-
like something. It sounds like a Kingdom Hearts quote.
that might be more of like a refutation though. Not sure.
Good. That's why I didn't say
I was
anything
thinking
about
that
that.
too.
So I will come back to that in just a few minutes.
Very nice.
Okay.
Uh, okay. Now, does the visual need more or different written text?
I don't know.
Well, this is like before the movie was out, so I can't really say need some reviews like on the.
Mm-hmm. Marisol, any thoughts on this one? Should the film have different or better text? What do you think?
That's what I can think of. Seems about right.
Okay. Marisol, can you hear me? She might not. There might be a technical issue. Let's get some other voices in here. Kaylee, can you hear me?
She put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Because it's kind
Thank
of
you.
confusing.
Yeah, Marisol says she thinks it should have some different text because it is kind of confusing. That's great. Perfect response here. Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm going to add that right in right now. So let me stop the video for a moment. Go back to this one. to show up in the film, it still makes little sense to those who may not have been familiar with the film or its original novel. Good. And then I can't, I'm still getting used to voices, so pardon me if I'm not able to identify all voices as quickly just yet. Who said the words about the refutation? That was really interesting. Who brought up that refutation part?
I did.
Thank you, Nick.
Name.
Oh,
Thank you, Nick.
Nick.
Uh, when I have the other visual up, I'm not able to see all the names. Okay, Nick, tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about this.
Well, I thought of it as you could question why does it matter if it's a story, why it's important, if it's not real. And they're saying it as like, as long as you like take something overall from the story and feel emotion from it, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. You're still getting a real emotion or lesson from it. So that's what I thought. It would be more of them answering that,
Honestly, the Kingdom Hearts
question.
thing.
Fiction response to nonfiction.
Mm-hmm. And this is really pivotal for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a great way to bring up this idea of a refutation. And this kind of strikes to the core of what the movie says and what the book specifically suggests, which is that this is just a basic story, but it's a story that takes classical elements and infuses them with a 20th century perspective. Okay, so what makes this refutation so important is that it challenges ideas about what values stories have for us personally and how the act of storytelling can represent a sort of self-healing or self-soothing need. Okay. So one of the things that you'll encounter in the writing of this particular book is that the story of Buttercup and Wesley, there's a lot of fun and humor in that. But as you come to read the text and as you watch the film many times, you'll begin to realize that the framework with Fred Savage and, or as they say, the kid from the Wonder Years, Kevin Arnold, and Columbo, that's actually the story. And you'll see what I mean when we get into the reading of the text. The story of The Princess Bride is itself the framework. The actual story is the relationship between the grandson and the grandfather. And I can't really explain what I'm trying to get across until we start getting into our discussions about the book, which will be coming up relatively quickly. So that's a great insight as to the kind of refutation that the film offers and that the original novel brings up as well. Okay, let's share the screen one more time. We're almost to the conclusion here. All right, so is the visual effective? Is it attractive, interesting? Is it clear? Is it convincing above all else? So I'm gonna just, again, try to get some different voices in here. Kaylee, what's your take on this? Is this an effective visual?
Effective, but I think that there's things to make it so it could have made more sense for like
Okay.
the movie,
Mm-hmm.
because like they definitely wanted to connect it to the book, and I feel like they connected it to the book really well, but the movie is more focused on like the main characters in the middle.
Okay, good. That's an excellent analysis. So let's share this. And we could say something like overall. That's a good transitional term to use as a summation for our conclusion. The poster is effective to an extent. However, it could have been rendered much more effective had it included some images of its excellent cast and the characters they portrayed. The bulk of the film is spent with them. And so therefore, knowing a bit more about the internal workings of the text would have clarified what the images were seeking to convey. Okay. So right away, we have several different areas that we could expand upon, but we have, you know, a lot of material here for an introduction, many areas that we could expand upon for analysis, and we have an effective idea for a conclusion. So right here, we've got 516 words. So let's think about that for a minute. 516 words that we could use in just a quick analysis or a sketch outline. And that's really cool because I think the assignment is only asking for about 600 words. So we're well on our way just with a few minutes of outlining toward creating something akin to the sort of size and scope of a paper that would be ready for an initial draft. Now, if you don't want to use this image, by the way, you may use this image if you'd like to do it for the purposes of the ad analysis. But of course, the topic is ultimately rests with you as a student. I think students will get more out of this analysis if they're able to choose their own topic. And if you can't think of one to choose, you could tie the thematic ideas together with the ad analysis for The Princess Bride, but you're not expected to do that. So this little introduction piece is just, again, taken right from your textbook. It comes right out of Practical Argument. And it's a great way, you can see the checklist here. It's a great way to organize your thoughts. Okay. Let me pause for questions.
Are you going to post that document that you were just typing on our D2L?
I will. I'll post a blank, and I'll post the one that we did as an example so that you can go back and refer to it. But I had to wait until after we got through discussing it. But yes, I'll post them as soon as we're done here. Now, in that same vein of thought, that was an excellent question that you asked. I'm just going to bring up this other example. Oops, I didn't do it correctly. Many of you have seen this before. Why is this not working? Share screen. There it is. Now, many of you have seen this before in some of my other classes, but this is yet another outline template. And this is very basic. I don't think you're going to need this at composition 2 level of writing. But if you want something that's just a little bit more complex, or that's laying things out in a much more traditional sense, this outline is also going to be available on Desire to Learn, and I'll let you look at it as much as you wish. So. And that was a great question. Was that, who was that, Caitlin? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Who oh, okay, yeah. Excellent question, Caitlin. That was great. So any other questions or concerns about anything that we've discussed for today? Or any concern?
We haven't quite.
Go
if
ahead.
we haven't quite figured out what ad we can use, can we use that in our discussion post and just kind of explain that we're going to use visual media or maybe a poster or the media we're going to use, but we just don't have an exact ad yet?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I designed it. You can also use any examples from your text as well. But yes, that's why I put it in here. So great question, Kevin. Absolutely, you can use this for your discussion response question. Jade, any questions or concerns?
I don't think so. I think you pretty much answered everything.
Okay, okay. Let me see. I've heard from, I think, almost all of you now. Andrea, any questions or concerns or points of clarification that I can make?
No, I think I'm fine for now.
Okay. So again, an outline is a great way to break this down and to start thinking about how to structure this particular assignment. When we meet again next Wednesday, we'll also have some time to think about perhaps ways that we could diagnose a multimedia visual argument. And I'll be using the original trailer from The Princess Bride if you want to get a sense of how you could structure or design an outline for a multimedia visual advertisement. So let me go back here for just a moment. And I want to go back to Okay, our course homepage. Okay, so in closing, I think that I just wanted to, again, reiterate that when you look at a visual ad, it could be a multimedia advertisement, it could be a print ad. You could pick a couple of examples from an ad campaign. But when you're analyzing a visual, you want to make sure that you take into account all of the same factors that you would as you design a argument for a longer, more complex literary argument. And understanding how you can use these techniques for a visual argument will translate, I think, very well into the design and scope of arguments that you might create for the purposes of an extended argument in life, in your career field, or even just in another writing class. Okay, that's it for me.
So would it be,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, the way you're kind of relating it to a larger scope of arguments, the argumentative papers, would it be a good design of outline to use the 4 pillars of argument as our design for this paper?
Absolutely. Again, the 4 pillars of design or argument, just for review, were the thesis statement, or the creation of the thesis, the development of good evidence to support your perspective, the refutation, and the conclusion. So if you wanted to build those 4 ideas around the construction of a visual ad, I think that would be a perfect way to sort of design an outline for yourself. That's a really good point to bring up, Kevin. Let me just say this then also about that topic. I realize that not everybody likes to or even needs to create an outline. That's why I don't assign it as an individual project component. But in this case, I don't think it could hurt. And even if you wanted to do just a quick thumbnail sketch or an idea organization to outline, you could do much worse than using the outlines of the checklist here on pages 94 and 95, or using the 4 pillars of argument. I think either of those would be really good options. Good point. Any last thoughts or questions, concerns for me?
You know, I think it was a really good session today.
Yeah, I thought you guys as a group, I thought you folks really did a nice job of bringing this little exercise to life. And as you saw, just a little bit of collaboration. I think we took more than the 15 minutes I'd originally created or budgeted for this, but that's okay. There were some technical things I had to smooth out. But the end result, 516 words designed within 20 minutes or so. You're only 100 words away from completing the full length and breadth of this assignment. And like I said, to come out with something akin to that for a rough draft, that's time well spent, I think. Okay. Anything else?
No, nothing else. This has been a good session, sir.
Thank you. I hope you have a nice Labor Day. Anybody have any Labor Day plans that are actually going to? I know it's tough to go somewhere right now. It's tough to gather in large numbers like we're used to, but no. The only thing that I've got going on is my niece is coming down from Wisconsin, and we're going to celebrate her 8th birthday party. So it's one last sort of summer fling for us.
Those were good.
But that's about it. Well, so if
Oh
you-
no!
yeah, what happened? Before I was able to officially sign off. Try that again. See, I knew it was time to wrap things up. This is Mr. Fowler officially signing off. Take care,
You
folks.
may.
We'll talk to you on Wednesday.
You too.
See.
Bye.
Have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
too.
See ya.
Have a-
Take care.
Okay.